Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Bieland, and we're recording live in the Sensitive Empowerment community. Today, we're talking with Krista O'Reilly Davy DeGuy. Did I get that right?
It's O'Reilly Davy DeGee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the topic is Living Unshackled, how self-awareness, self-compassion, and imperfect action will walk you to greater freedom. And Krista, we were talking just before we were recording, and I just want to say, I think your work is so beautiful. I absolutely love how deep and raw and authentic and vulnerable your work is and your message is, because you absolutely give all of us permission to be ourselves, and that we, something you said when you were kind of signing up for this was, you said in HSP, you wanted HSPs to know this, that we are wired together in a beautiful way, and that you're gifted, needed, and on purpose. And Krista, I think you and your authenticity, I've got my Authenticity is Beautiful shirt on today in honor of you, because I think that that's the most beautiful a person can be, is when they're real and authentic. And I see that in your work and your writing. And I know so many people in our community actually have shared with me how much they love your work. So we're just really happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here too, Julie. And I often refer people over to you as well, like to your work. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Yes, I was so looking forward to us just getting to have a conversation. And your work in general is amazing, I think, because you really do teach people how to be themselves in the world. And I think that's about the best gift you could give. And the way that you show up, it's rare to actually get to spend time with people who show up so real and so authentic. And I happen to really love that about you. So I'm excited for our conversation today.
Thank you. Honestly, Julie, like often people do say things to me like, you're so brave or whatever. And I do see my bravery these days, but a lot of the things about just showing up real, I'm just being me. And it's just that for so long, I lived in that world where being me was deemed like it seemed like it was wrong, and it was just like, as I let go of shame and refuse to carry shame, and that I just show up honest, like it's not, and it's natural and it's easy and I have zero shame about it. And so I think that the more that we model that, it gives people hope, right? It gives other people, even if it's 2% or 15 or 20% of the population, hope and permission that actually you're cool and you get to just be who you are. And it's a messy process, but it's doable. So
yeah, I feel like I went through that in my life too, and I think a lot of us as HSPs have done that we were, grew up with that message that there was something wrong with us and who we were and how we experienced the world. And it was so interesting. I have my son yesterday was saying something about how he has a problem with small talk. He's 17. And I was like, oh my God, I love this conversation, because I want you to know, I was like telling him, I want you to know that in fact, you don't have to engage in small talk, that the world needs people that talk deeply. Yeah. And that's who I am. I mean, I'll dive down deep with someone, but I can't do small talk. So.
I hear you. Yes. And it's just so funny because I work online like you, and I can share from the heart. And like, I really care deeply about building a kinder, safer world. And for people who struggle with mental illness, for people who are neurodiverse, for people who just, I think highly sensitive humans are neurodiverse, but it can look a lot of different ways. And I've lost my train of thought, but the small talk thing. Oh yeah. Even like responding to comments on Instagram. I'm like, oh, like what? Like, just please, could I write an essay instead? Like, I don't know how to do it.
Every time I see some of your writing, I just love it. I find myself reading down into it too. I mean, I think it's wonderful because it's so rich and deep. And I hope you're writing some books. Are you going to write some books, or have you already?
Yeah. I published some journals. They're seasonal mindfulness journals. And because part of my work and the way that I have learned to love myself well and to thrive in life is this like a seasonal approach to it. Understanding not just the beauty and wisdom in sort of, as in our energetic flow through the lunar cycle, or, through the actual like literal seasons, but also these bigger life seasons. So like I would say right now I'm in a deep winter season. I'm still learning how to breathe and be without my beautiful baby. And who wasn't a baby. He was a young, beautiful man, but my baby. And but yeah, that seasonal. Julie, I've lost my train of thought again.
Well, you know what's so funny is I totally forgot to read your bio too.
Oh, the books. Okay, I will just say, I'll just say this though, because I am very excited about it, Julie. I have signed my first contract. So I published those journals, but I am under contract right now, and I'm writing a book called Unshackled and Remembering Your Way to Freedom. And it's a book that actually I started like 5 years ago. And then these past years, I've been trying to, keep my son alive. And I was, going through a lot as I was also doing my work. And now I'm in a season of where it's right season. It's a hard season, but it's also, I just know that it's also the right season. So yeah, that will come out in spring 2023. My publisher, they're a small indie publisher. The reason I chose them is that the owner has her own experience with mental illness and even like coming out as gay, through part of her life, and just lots of hard emotional work. And she is so compassionate and willing to like love me as a human first. So, and really offer me the flexibility that I need in this season. So yeah, so.
Oh, I almost felt like crying. That's so beautiful. I love that. Let me read your bio so people have it.
Okay.
Krista lives in central Alberta and works as a joyful living educator and writer. As a stubborn questioner, hopeful reformer, and a highly sensitive human in a messy world, her motto is, "You're imperfect. Life is messy. Show up anyway." Her mission is to help you figure out how. Oh, isn't that beautiful, guys? Oh my goodness. I even like your bio. We've got lots of people in the comments just loving this deep conversation, and being able to talk so openly like this, and about something that's so deeply painful, of the loss of your son, and how much that must have completely shifted your entire being, and what that means to you in this season of life, like you talk about. I really like how you talk about it as in terms of season of life. It's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like I just moved into a place recently in my life where this recognition, in a sense, it's always been under the surface, but more this recognition of how precious life is. I mean, just everything that we've been going through during this pandemic, and the loss of people that I've had some loss during this pandemic. So this feeling of, wow, we have to be present right now, and how much time I wasted being in a people pleasing situation, trying to please others, trying to be perfect, trying to be somebody that I thought people wanted me to be. That even impacted me. Coming out gay came late in life because I wasn't myself. And so now I'm just in such a deeply rooted place of being myself. And that's why I love talking with other people that are also in those stages of life,
Yeah. And I love the way you say that. Like, I also refer to it as being deeply rooted. And, self-awareness and self-compassion are two of those roots that we put them down with practice, and they become stronger and stronger, and they hold us fast, regardless of, what's happening in the world. And I would like to mention here, because I feel like probably the people in your community get this, but I feel like it's important to say. So I feel like I am deeply rooted, and all the work that I've done in my life to learn to love myself, learn to witness my strength and my struggle shame-free, to practice honoring my wiring, etc. All of that work is what's holding me here. When I think I'm doing the impossible. I think any mother who has lost a child, and then I lost my beautiful son to suicide, it's impossible. It's a pain so deep and wide. And I have no doubt that all the work that I've done to this point is why I'm standing here. And it's not pretty. It is not pretty. And, but it matters. And that, you know, I'm very motivated to keep talking about this because, you know, I talk, even just the title here, like that I had presented, you know, how self-awareness, self-compassion, and imperfect action can walk us into freedom. I'm a freedom seeker. I say that my whole life has been a journey to freedom. And my book, you know, book one, because I think that I'm writing at least 3 books, but this one is about remembering my way to freedom. And but what I want to say is, it's okay that you feel messy. Like it's okay to claim that you are walking in freedom or that you are deeply rooted, and also to feel pain, and also to struggle, and also to sometimes tip over into just depletion and have to retreat for a while to be rebuilt. Like all of that is okay. And I think because the messaging that we hear in the world, like at least, like I feel like I don't know, like 96.8% of the time in the, like, you know, the self-help and the, like all that, the places that I'm always learning and listening, it still makes you feel that you're not allowed to acknowledge your strengths until you've sort of arrived. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on here in your group, but it's like, all we're doing is practicing. This journey is just like, as long as we have breath within us, we have the privilege to continue to become. And that means that we're never waiting for this arrival point, right? We get to just be messy and learning and in progress and hurting and needing each other and curious and growing and all of that. And also we can say, I am beautiful. I am on purpose. I love who I am.
Yes.
You know, and that can be life-changing, so life-changing, because like you can just, you know, you must see this too, Julie, but I see it so much. Like often when people join me in my brave and beautiful community, these are women in the middle of life. They come from, they're, you know, they're successful, they're wise, they have degrees and careers and all these beautiful, you know, accolades. And they come and it's the first time that they start to do this work of, wait, you mean I already am strong? I already am brave. I already am beautiful. I already am gifted. And it's like, yeah, like they're not getting this message from many places.
Yes, exactly. And what beauty really is. I mean, that's like, I think it's an amazing conversation to be having. Renata said something I thought was, I wanted to read out that I thought was great. Talking about, I feel like I'm falling apart half the time. I feel like people don't want to hear about this because it makes them uncomfortable. I
Yeah.
appreciate people who normalize not being okay without judging. I think
Right.
that's powerful, right? Because we need to talk about this, especially as such deep feelers and sensitive people. You know, the world's not set up for sensitivity. So we do really experience intensity. We experience intensity, difficult intensity and positive intensity. We experience it all, you know, depending on where we are on that scale of sensitivity.
Yeah.
But,
or we try to numb it out because it's too overwhelming and it feels impossible. And but
it's so interesting, isn't it, Krista? I was thinking about this too, that in my life, because I'm so sensitive, I often would develop like anxiety if I'm going to go out and, you know, go spend a day with, you know, my partner's family or something like that, when it's like a big day. And now I'm really practicing, because that old part of me is like, oh, you know, I have to be a certain way. But I always fight against that. And now I'm going to that place where it's like, what's important is that I really want to bring myself into the present moment and not go into that external focus all the time, but more like, let me enjoy this conversation I'm having right now with this person, and not think about what are people thinking about it, and just be in this moment. It's such a wonderful way to live, to let go of. I like what you said, the freedom seeking. I am all about that, Krista. I feel the same way. That's a big part of, I use that word a lot, that I often say, like, I feel freedom, because unshackled, like you were saying, I love that concept.
Yeah. And I think the more I mean, yeah, we could spin off in a million directions and each one of them would be delightful. But but that idea of, there's two thoughts that bubbled up, and one, I definitely came into this call hoping we'd be able to touch on it. And it's this idea or truth that as we learn to really love ourselves well as highly sensitive people, sometimes what people tip a little far in one direction, and that can look like isolating, retreating, kind of coming into this bubble because it's too hard out there. And I think that that is an appropriate response sometimes. There are times in our life where we need space to decompress. We need, maybe we have like, yeah, a lot of trauma, chronic, illness, hard things. For whatever reason, there are times where absolutely it is such a beautiful gift to give ourselves some time and space to just focus on rebuilding and healing and bandaging up and nourishing ourselves so that we are once again equipped to kind of move back out into the world. One of my concerns around this, and it's a conversation that would be equally relevant if we were just talking about those of us who live with anxiety, say. But also it comes up in conversations around, being around sensory processing sensitivity, is that for me, the goal is to live awake and willing and alive. And that's going to look different for each of us. And being an HSP is only one layer of who I am. It's an important layer, and it's a life-changing layer. And it's the difference, and for many of us, I think, between actual knowing how to live in this world and suicide, like dying. I think I think there are a lot of HSPs who die because they can't see, they feel bad and wrong and broken. And they feel so much shame and judgment. So literally, I think it's like that important to know this about ourselves, but and to help the younger people in our lives learn this trait earlier on, right? But I don't want to live in a safe bubble. And this is an interesting thing, is I didn't know in the past how to be in this world. And so I would sort of oscillate between like overextending myself, like saying yes to volunteering and doing all these things, trying to be a good girl, and then burning out. And, I learned along the way that, that I didn't want that anymore. I'm losing my train of thought again. I had a car accident right before my son died too, and I shattered the windshield with my head, and my brain has not been the same since. So I still have some work to do in like healing. And
that's okay. I'm good at following. And I wanted to have a question too that came in. Jill's
Sure.
asking, Krista, is it more common for HSPs to have more difficulty with self-acceptance?
I would say yes. And the reason is that we are the minority in terms of neurological disposition, and the whole Western world, like some research calls this weird cultures. It's like Western, educated, industrialized, something, because say in Japan, and there's other cultures that actually esteem and value our qualities. But if we live in these Western industrialized cultures, they do not. So, it's like fighting an uphill battle every time you leave your house. So yeah, it is very difficult to accept yourself when everything is working against you, so to speak. I think we absolutely need safe places. So hopefully everybody has at least one other human who witnesses their beauty. I always think about my children, like how much I adore them, but I want other adults to be able to speak life to them and to really see their gifting. And like, that's such a gift. So, we do, I think, because it's like an uphill battle, we need these spaces to reinforce the truth that we're wired differently and on purpose. And we have struggles like every other human, but we really are in it together in a beautiful way. But I do think it's also valid to say we have to work harder than some people, because just because of our wiring. We need to learn. We can't just coast. So that's the thing, is some people can coast. They can ignore their needs. They can push through. They can thrive and hustle. We can't. Like, we'll crash. So we do have to work harder to learn a new way. And then when we learn, though, who we are, then it's amazing. We actually, and we believe that we're worth it and all of that. Then it's like, ooh, we can actually handcraft these lives that feel like home. And I would like to say that's how I kind of envision the idea of freedom. Really broadly, it would be like just feeling at home in my body and my life.
Oh, I love that. Feeling at home in your body and your life. So true, right? I think that it's so interesting in thinking back on life. I struggled with a lot of depression in my early part of my life. And I was 17 the first time I thought about suicide, and had a few instances after that, into my 20s even. And it was, for me, it was a moment of, I had such pain. I had such pain about, I was like an empty vessel, had spent so much time trying to please the world that I didn't know who I was. And I had only received messages that who I was not good enough in some way. So
Yeah.
I think so many of us as sensitive people have experienced that. And it was really so life-changing for me to discover this trait, to understand myself within it, being at that very top end of sensitivity, and knowing
Yeah.
that, and that's the most beautiful thing. Like, I have such a mission now. I think this is where so much of my passion comes from too, is wanting to create a paradigm shift, because I want this shift to be that we value and honor sensitivity for the gifts that it has, and that
Yeah.
we take care of honoring our sensitivity too, that doing what we need. And the more we talk about it, the better. I mean, even just having these kinds of conversations are changing people's lives, because many people
Yeah.
for the first time are hearing these things, that you're
Yeah.
accepted as you are, you're valuable for who you are. And
Yeah.
what a powerful thing to be doing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I really, yes, absolutely. And that's, so I'm going to spin off again, but do you know Lisa Renee Hall? She's a Canadian. She's from Toronto. Okay, Canada, I'm Canadian. So she doesn't only speak to HSPs. She speaks a lot about, I might get it wrong. Like, she works in the arts community, but anyway, she does something for HSPs that I love, and I often refer people to. It's like a sort of low risk kind of journaling thing. Maybe it lasts 12 weeks or something like that. But her goal in that particular part of her work is to help HSPs learn, like, stay involved in advocacy. And I'm not using her words. And I really, really appreciate this, because this is one of these examples where, as HSPs, we do have to have really good, healthy boundaries. Like, we are so, we pick up other people's energy, we feel all the emotion, when there's suffering in the world, it almost can drown you. So we have to be really careful about whose voice we listen to, how much we're online, who we're listening, allowing into our inner circles, etc. And yet, our voices are needed. And because of our wiring, a lot of us will feel more comfortable or safer or more inclined to live lives kind of behind the scenes more. And that's beautiful and important as well. But some of us, not all of us, want to do that. I want a voice. I have a voice, and I'm going to use it. And I am going to continually advocate for social justice. I am going to do my part to help build a kinder, safer world for my babies, two of whom, my son who died and my youngest, are also off the charts HSPs like their mama. And I feel like there's urgency around it. It's not, and there is urgency because I just lost a child, and I'm not saying this is, him being an HSP was the only thread of his suffering, and his pain, but it's significant anyway. And so Lisa Renee Hall's kind of, I can't remember what she calls it right now. but she invites people who are highly sensitive to reflect and do some self-inquiry so that they can find their ways of also showing up in that more public space to advocate for the things that they believe in, but in ways that still protect and honor their wiring. And I think that's so important because I believe, Julie, that your voice is absolutely needed. And I believe that my voice is absolutely needed. And we can only do that if, also behind the scenes, we're resting a lot. We are grounded in self-compassion. We are, we have all these habits and practices that keep us strong and healthy so that we can then also go out and do the work in the world that we want to do. And so, yeah, it just feels really important to me right now because I relate to how much fear and discomfort and all of that can send us fleeing back to the safety of our living rooms or our beds. And, do that for a while if that's what you need. But then if there's a different calling in you, like something else that's saying, oh, but I care deeply about this or that, I want you to know, like, you can actually do that too, even as an HSP. There are ways that you can do that. And we need these diverse voices, like louder online.
Yes, I agree with you so much. We talk a lot about self-compassion in this community. And we even have a Be the Change topic because I really am passionate about that too. I want to see more HSPs in leadership positions where lawmaking, policy reform, education, all of it, health, all of it. I think that we have incredible strengths. And I found that, like, for myself, like if I had imagined myself doing this many years ago, I never would have thought that I'm going to be, hosting webinars for thousands of people and stuff like that. It's like I never would have thought I would be doing stuff like that. But what's really helped me is the practice of learning how to really live as myself. And I know that that's said a lot. People talk about be you and all that, but it was the most life-changing thing ever because no matter what I'm doing, I keep reminding myself, and every time I feel fear or anxiety come up and I go back into just be yourself and back into my body again and back into myself, and I can do anything if I'm just being myself because I've developed a self-compassion practice, which is huge for me and so many of us that have talked about that in this community. It's life-changing to be a kind, loving friend to yourself. And it's no mistake that the most painful time of my life when I was thinking about suicide was when I was the hardest on myself with zero self-compassion, because self-compassion for a sensitive person helps with everything. I mean, we can get our feelings hurt, we can get impacted. You're talking about protecting energy and boundaries. All of that is so important, but we still get hit with things that are hard. And self-compassion is so life-changing, and it really is a brain skill you can develop. It's a brain training skill you can develop, and it's really going to help you get into those places. And even just the power of our communities being able to normalize and validate our experiences. It's amazing to see people in the community starting to step up now in roles and doing things in the world that maybe they couldn't do before. So I'm really happy about that part.
Yeah. I think any human, like HSP or not, I think that self-awareness and self-compassion, if we're going to live fully awake and alive and healthy, I think we need those tools. I just consider them as indispensable. And then there's some other elements of my work, like I use a seasonal living framework it runs through all of my work. It's going to be in my books. Like that, I feel like is optional. I feel like that really works for me and for so many of the sensitive people. And for me, I don't work only with highly sensitive persons, but they might still be, moderate to, on that sort of empathy sensitivity scale, or they have tried to hustle and, they bought into that more is better, faster is better thing for a lot of their life. And now they're like, I can't do this. I don't want it. So, what were we talking about? My brain is just like in and out right now.
I know mine is actually doing the same thing. I love just like a heart-centered approach to everything. We even have like a HSPs in business group now in the community because that really developed out of this, exactly what you were saying. It's like this cutthroat, aggressive marketing styles and stuff that just doesn't work. And that's what so many business programs are teaching us to do.
Yeah.
It's just, it's about connection, and it's about developing trust, and it's about being in these deep places together and having these real deep conversations that that's who we are as sensitive people. That's what lights us up and fulfills us, to be in those kinds of places. And I love that you're sharing that message too, that it is possible. You don't have to do it the way so many people are doing it. You can do it the way that works for you.
Yeah. I'm grateful for my stubbornness. My stubbornness has gotten me into trouble since I was little sometimes. My husband hasn't always appreciated, but overall, I think he's very grateful for me. He is. But I love that my stubbornness has kept me moving when I had to fight hard to find the education and the information that I needed, because it wasn't available, like I think I was listening to you yesterday on your podcast, and I think that you had mentioned that you might have only learned about this trait in your late 20s or early 30s. I'm not quite sure. But a lot of us, like, we spent a lot of our lives without this layer of important information. So my stubbornness, I think, it's one of probably my greatest strengths, because I've never wanted to be one of the crowd. It's like, as much as I sometimes felt lonely or sometimes wished that I knew how to fit in more easily, I also never wanted to be like anybody else. And so the more that I've sort of put down these roots of self-awareness and self-compassion, I was like, oh, I like me. I can witness, I can see the struggles. I can see why, I've built up these layers of self-protection. I can have compassion for my disordered eating and my attempts to numb pain. And and then because I'm rooted in self-awareness and self-compassion, now I can ask myself, okay, now what? What's the path forward? Even if I only have a tiny little bit of the path, because I think we find our way in action. We get our hands and hearts dirty. We step out into the little bit of light we have. And then the next step unfolds and the next step unfolds. But stubbornness is a great thing, that grit and stubbornness to persist when most of the messaging is not wired for you.
Yeah.
So I want to say, a lot of us, I was raised in a very loving home. And my mom and dad were, they had struggled through their own pain and trauma and everything. And I think they did they're imperfect. They're gone. They've been gone a long time, but they were imperfect, just like I am imperfect, but they were very committed to healing and loving their kids and their family. And my parents were very social justice oriented. And so I grew up from a really tender age, aware of the suicidality and alcoholism in the neighboring Indigenous communities. I was very aware of famine in India and Africa. I was aware that the family just down the street had no groceries. And so my mom was sending groceries. Like, I knew all of this. We were adopting babies. So some of my siblings had come from abuse, like a lot of abuse, and then joined our home. So I so admire my parents' heart and the way that they walked out their values. And that's part of me today and part of my passion for advocacy, even though I haven't always felt very brave, but it's like, I'm going to use my voice. But what I want to say is they gifted me with that. But what happened is they didn't know how to teach me what to do with that emotion. Mm-hmm. So they brought awareness, and on my little shoulders, I was carrying it all. But I had no sense of agency. I couldn't do anything about it. And so I was being crushed under this weight of knowledge of suffering, but I didn't get any tools, no language, no tools to know, what do I do with all of this? And And how do I process this? And so I became suicidal. From 14 to 18, I tried to die 3 times. I knew I was loved. It had nothing to do with not being loved. I was an honor student. I had friends, but I was felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I want to mention that because I think that we can, sometimes the thought is that something bad must have happened when there's suicidal tendencies. But no, it's often our sensitivity. Nobody's teaching us what to do with this. And this is really, really raw, but I just honestly going to say it. I thought I could do better. I tried hard to do better for my babies, and I still lost a child. That's hard. And it doesn't stop me from, because it's not all on me. We also live in a world where most of the messaging puts shame on people who can't keep up. It makes people feel hopeless because they know that they can't survive in this 9 to 5 hustle mode. And so they don't see a point. Like, so there's room for like this huge, big conversation. It's a messy one, but I just, you can feel probably that I feel a sense of urgency about it. I feel that, I feel, but I feel also happy here. I also think that I am exactly the right person to talk about this. And that brings me to, and then I will pause, something that you say a lot, Julie, and I really believe it more than ever before, is that if somebody knows they're an HSP or they suspect, I really do think it's better to hire a therapist, a medical professional, if a coach who actually is an HSP. If you're not an HSP, you don't know, you have no concept of what it's like to live in this body. It's theory doesn't cut it. This is such a visceral lived experience that we need other people who they get it. Yes. They understand.
100% agree with you on that one. It's why I started the HSP practitioners directory, so people can find HSP practitioners. I mean, I 100% agree with you that working with an HSP therapist or coach, depending on what you're working on, is so life-changing. And looking at perfectionism, such a huge piece of all of that we're talking about, I think, because what I've seen over and over again is that as part of this trait, we try to be perfect. We try to get things done right. We try to do it right the first time. We're really hard on ourselves if it's not perfect. I lived most of my life with some sort of a measurement stick that I always failed, since we can't actually reach perfectionism. And I think it's so important for us to talk about that. And I've also I'd say self-compassion, as well as really paying attention to, you're talking about boundaries, protecting your energy, self-compassion, and really paying attention to how we are looking at perfectionism. This is such a big part of it, that we are not measuring ourselves against that. And unfortunately, so much of a Western society really does kind of, plant those seeds in you that your life is supposed to look like this. And if it doesn't, there's something wrong with you. And that, to me, what I've really learned is those labels are 1,000 pounds. The trait itself, maybe the challenges within the trait itself might be 5 pounds. The label that something is wrong with you for who you are, or the perfectionism, is 1,000 pounds. That's the part that we can handle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because I think any label, when it comes with shame and like judgment, it can crush. But if you remove the shame and judgment, it's neutral. It's just, and then when we feel safe, because, then we can explore it and see, for instance, that I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I continually like lower the bar, and, this is a work in progress. I always think of the perfectionism as it can go into remission, but it's always there. And so then when you're when you are vulnerable and in a weakened state because of trauma, sickness, etc., then you really need to be more conscious of how it's going to show up again. But one of the things here that I hope it's okay to just kind of go this direction, you can pull me on back, is that I think a lot of these things, like say perfectionism, it's a way of learning how to cope in the world. It's like if we can just observe a little bit more, like objectively, what we see is that addiction, perfectionism, lot of, disordered eating habits, like a lot of these things that can definitely they can be problematic in and of themselves. They're just ways that we have been trying to feel safe in the world. And I think that it's very helpful to kind of see that and say, oh, of course, I was doing my best. Of course, that's how I was trying to get my needs met, or that's how I was trying to feel safe in the world. And then it's like, it creates some space to get curious and then to think, okay, what can I, how can I move forward, knowing this tendency in myself, but and staying conscious of how it shows up for me individually or in my family, and then even learn how to use that, which we might judge as bad, but lean into our strengths and our wiring to serve us. So sometimes it is appropriate to just sort of heal and quiet the noise of something, so it's just not a big player in our life. But I think it's and I think that is a good thing, but I think I'm more curious and interested in this idea of learning to see that our bodies and brains are for us, not against us. So even like say trauma, when our body is experiencing, our window of tolerance is lessened and we're going into hyperarousal or hypoarousal, our body is not against us. It's trying to love us and protect us in the same way that we picked up adaptive habits or self-protection habits to try to feel safe. And then it's like, it's so much more compassionate. And then when we feel like, oh, okay, I'm loved, I'm not bad because I have these habits, all of a sudden we can sort of soften and we can start to see new joyful possibility.
Yes.
So is it okay if I share an example, like
yes.
a current? So something that has come up a lot, like as I am living with PTSD and what do you call it, panic disorder right now, and doing trauma therapy and tending to myself well in all sorts of ways. But I've practiced over the years learning to listen in to my own inner wisdom. And I always hear a response. So I believe that we are the experts on our own lives. I'm such a big believer in gathering in our support systems, but that does not mean abdicating our personal power and responsibility. We are the experts on our own lives. So listening in, one of the things that came up for me strongly is just lean into your strengths, Krista. And some of my strengths, which can absolutely look like perfectionism, but they serve me. So I'm well ordered. I have a weekly rhythm that honors my wiring. I'm a menu planner. I have these ways of moving through the world that sometimes have been judged as perfectionist, but they are in fact strengths of mine. Deep diving into research. My son just died. I'm dealing with trauma. What do? I take courses. I learn. I build a sense of agency by leaning into my strengths and gathering knowledge and understanding and then applying it to my life. And I have been thinking about this lately, how I think it's a gentler place to be. It's not about eradicating these parts of us that can be problematic if we tip a little bit too far one way. It's about kind of seeing the full, messy, glorious truth of who we are and how we are and where we are, in what season of life. And then as we really embrace who we are and we love ourselves well, we can lean into all these parts of ourselves. I don't like, does that make sense to you? It
Yeah.
feels different to me than just saying, oh, perfectionism bad, put that away. It's like, perfectionism actually is what helps me hold my family together in crises, because I know how to get things done. I know how to keep us anchored. That's a gift,
Yeah.
right? It's a gift.
I think a lot of it is about, self-acceptance of what you are experiencing. Like, I know for myself, I used to really judge emotions that were not labeled as positive emotions.
Yeah.
And there was a real shift for me to start to instead identify, recognize, acknowledge, normalize, validate those emotions, because
Yeah.
suddenly they didn't take me over anymore, because I found that the more I tried not to feel something, the more magnified it gets. Oh, Krista,
Right.
we could talk for hours about this, but I want to share, how people can find you, and if there's anything else that you would really like to say to just kind of end our beautiful conversation today. How can people find you?
I am at alifeinprogress.ca. That's my website. And I am on Facebook and Instagram. But if my home is at alifeinprogress.ca.
Yeah, that's a wonderful.
So, one of your community is already well connected in, but if they know of somebody who's looking for another community of, it's specifically for growth-minded women in the messy middle of life. The growth-minded bit is important because I love to learn. And one of the ways that I stay healthy and happy in my life is having a learning curve in my life. So I just have walked away from a lot of the business talk online that said I should do it this way, I should do that. And I'm like, I'm doing it my way. I'm just going to be real, do it me, and then do me. And then the people who need me will come.
Yes.
But it is a really beautiful, wonderful space. It's my favorite place to connect online right now. I only open doors 3 times a year, so new members can join in May, in case your members might have a friend or somebody that they know who are looking for a place. And every month we have a new topic that we delve into. It follows sort of this rhythm, because I'm big into like seasonal living rhythms. So we have a few weeks where we approach a topic. The first week is all about like self-awareness and why does this even matter to me? And week 2 is about staying grounded in self-compassion as we ask, what do I even want? And then week 3, we talk about practicing or imperfect action. And then we take a rest week because the rest is so important. Anyway, come connect with me there. There's free resources. There's all sorts of ways to learn and grow with me. And I love to chat with people. So
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I'll just read something Crystal wrote just now as we wrap up. Thank you, Krista, for sharing openly. I love that you continue to show up exactly as you are through this all, sending so much love. That's beautiful. Thank you
thank you.
guys for being here. Krista, thank you for sharing your story. And I loved having these, deep, beautiful conversations with you. I think I could talk to you for hours, which is unusual, right? As an HSP, we could talk about such beautiful, conversations in these deep places. And thank you for being you, for showing up as yourself, and for sharing all this beautiful wisdom with us. I really appreciate you in the world. And we're getting lots of thank yous coming in. So many thank yous.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Sensitive Empowerment community, for being here and enriching our experiences. And if you'd like to join the Sensitive Empowerment community or find resources for highly sensitive people, you can visit my website, juliebellen.com or sensitiveconnection.com. Thank you, Krista. So happy to have time with you and look forward to staying connected in the world. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. You're a little light for me. I'm always watching you. So
that's so beautiful. I love that we connected. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Okay.
Hey, good
Thanks
care
for having
yourself
me.
out there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.